Okay, and this is a really big thing that we are sort of taught to argue. We're always taught um, or conned into arguing, or, getting into some sort of controversy. So, even if you're pulled over by the policeman will say to you, why were you speeding? Okay, and the minute that you answer his question, I mean, you've entered the controversy, haven't you?
Yes.
So, I always say to them, I mean, the last time that I got pulled over for speeding, it was quite funny because the policeman says, why were you speeding? And I said, was I? And he goes, well, yes, you were. And I said, really? And he goes, he pulls out this sort of black box, which he claimed was a camera. And he showed it to me, and I said, that's a nice box you got there. And he sort of looked at me like, hang on a second, he hasn't actually, he's not like giving me anything to work with here. Because when you don't enter into the controversy, you're not actually self-admitting, you're not actually, digging a hole for yourself, and people do it all the time.
I've got one, and I'll explain this to the rest of the listeners later, but I've been going for a couple of weeks now to a group that talks about a lot of these things, and I am going to share those different groups that you can go to in different states at the end of the call. And one of the gentlemen who's gotten pretty far with this mentioned that every time he gets pulled over by the cops, he's actually got a watch that can record voice.
Yes.
And every time the policeman comes up to him, he'll say, just so you know, officer, this is being recorded and you have the right to remain silent, and everything you say and will be used against you in the court of law, and you have the right to an attorney. And the guy, they do a double take, they just can't believe what they're hearing.
Yeah, they don't like it when you start to turn the tables around, And I got pulled over by a plainclothes policeman, and he was saying to me, do you know who I am? And I said, well, of course I don't know who you are. What?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you want? And he said, could you step out of the car, please? And I said to him, well, is there a charge? And he's going, no, just step out of the car, please. And I'm going, is there a charge? Step out of the car, please. Well, is there a charge, or am I free to go? And we were doing this for ages. He's like, okay, well, show me your license. And I said, well, do you have any proof that I have an obligation to have one of those things? And this sort of conversation went on for ages. And then he just went back to his car and sat down there and called his friends. And we were there for ages. And I thought, well, I must be free to go then. So I just drove off, and he chased us again and pulled us over. And I said, hi, how can I help you? He said, okay, get out of your car. And I said, well, is there a charge, or am I free to go? And this just sort of went on for ages. And finally, after the third time, I decided, okay, I'm going to hand him over the private agreement that I have with the transport minister. And he took it off me. He was about to pull out his gun, I think, on the third time. But he took it off me and just stood there dumbfounded reading it. And I just drove off and left it at that, because it is. I have to admit, though, it can be very confronting and very frightening when you're confronted with force, with police or anyone like that.
And I've never been to court before, but I've heard about it as well. And I've heard about how scary it is. And I can imagine, even if you did know a lot of these things, about the law, once you get into that situation, a lot of those things can fly out the window.
It is, and it's very hard to react, I think, calmly in those situations, because whether you've been anyone who's been in a fight before, or been in a situation where you've been threatened, or where the police are sort of demanding things of you, the adrenaline starts to pump in your body. And it's something that is very hard to control, this sort of natural reaction of this fight or flight that they call it. And once that adrenaline starts to pump, it's very hard to sort of maintain a very calm disposition in that moment. Especially like for myself, having a wife and a small child in the car and not sort of wanting to expose them to, to any of this force, because all they're doing, all this is about is revenue, I mean, that's the other good thing that you can sort of say to them is, well, is this a transaction of a securities exchange? Because if it is, then you require my consent for that, and I don't give it. But if it's not, then you're not going to be generating anything that's going to give me any obligation. So I'll see you later.
I mean, all these things, this kind of information, is there, I mean, in regards to just starting to learn this kind of information, I mean, obviously the Mary Croft sounds great. Do you have anything else that you can give the listeners that is going to be able to help them with getting to this next step of becoming a free man?
Yeah, sure. Look, the first thing that I sort of suggest to people is to start doing some research for yourself, just to sort of get out there. There is a lot of information out there, but there's also a lot of stuff where some people in America, for example, have gotten themselves into trouble doing this because they've been doing half of this and half of something illegal. You know, I have to say that this is really all about stepping back into common law and not doing anyone any harm, but just basically stating and living in your natural rights. Okay, so the first thing that I would sort of suggest to people to do would be to have a look at all of the documents and agreements that you've created and look at changing them. Okay, so let's say, for example, you've got a library card. You know, all of you out there at the moment, take out all of your cards, all of your licenses, anything that you've got, whether it's a library card, whether it's your bank card, and have a look at it, and have a look and see exactly who you are. Because I think probably 99% of you will actually be the straw man, and you didn't know it, right? And because you didn't know it, you didn't sign the right way on the back of it. So what happened was you created this enjoinder. It's a legal term called an enjoinder, which means that you've actually agreed to be the straw man. You've agreed to be the surety for it. Okay, so there's no separation. And what
I've got my web designer here, and he's just put out all his cards, and he's got them on the table, and he's shaking his head in dismay.
Yeah, you probably heard that. Anyone who's sort of listened to the Strawman illusion. By the way, that was just recorded in the lounge room floor of a friend's house last year, and it wasn't really intended for being transmitted around the world, but it has, and it's become quite a huge thing. But it was just like this small gathering at the time. But I remember at the time everyone getting their cards out and putting them on the floor, and we were all laughing about it because I was going, yep. You.
Yeah, your stuff.
You're screwed. Okay. So have a look at the way that you've signed on the back. Now, most of you are going, yep. You.
Yeah, your stuff.
You're screwed. Okay. So have a look at the way that you've signed on the back. Now, most of you would have just signed your signature. Okay. What you really should have been doing was writing the word by, B-Y, and then putting your autograph, okay, and then putting a comma after that and writing the words either agent, authorized agent, or, which is even better, principal, okay, because you're the principal creditor for the debtor, the strawman. Okay, so if you remain the principal creditor, you're in the most powerful position over anyone, government or whatever. You're the principal creditor.
Do you have any examples of that, like screenshots or anything that we can muster up?
Oh gosh, you mean to send through right now as a file?
Not right now, but if we put them up on the forum a bit later.
Sure, I can do that. I have a heap of stuff that I can show you some examples of.
Sure. Well, and everyone who's listening, and everyone who will listen to this later, I have set up a new section of the forum called the Freeman Society. And if you go on there, that's where we're all going to be talking about this kind of information, and this is where you'll find those kind of screenshots. So after this call, we'll start to speak in there. So just so you know that.
Okay,
make sure you register.
Great. Now, anyone who's doing any research, please ignore a movement in America called the Montana Free Men, because I think these guys were doing some fairly strange and some very sort of illegal activities by the sound of it. I haven't really researched much into them, but some of these people in America, some people refer to the movement as patriots or things like that. But I found that a lot of these things are kind of counter to what we're trying to achieve here, which is really just to take control of our straw man and also to take back our status as being sovereign beings on this planet, because there's no one that has any greater rights than anybody else on this planet. I don't care who they are. We're all born equal.
Completely agree. And with the sovereign, on that topic, acting as a sovereign, I understand that you have to really have you need to be ready for it. I don't think it's a case of just everyone saying, okay, I'm ready to be a sovereign, because in my opinion,